Okay, I'm starting over here with using the flip charts. So if people just want to meander a little bit this way. Okay. One of the things I'm only too acutely aware of is that whenever you're running a program, there are two things going on. One's the work that's going on in your head, and the other is the actual experience you have. And very often, the trick is to try and get some overlap. There's never perfect overlap. But so what I want to do is just go through, in a sense, what was going on in my head yesterday, in the sense of where I think we've got to today. So when Pippa and I and John were designing this, what it is we thought we were covering yesterday. And what we think we're here together because we think that almost all the things that really, really matter in life, all the things that are really, really interesting, you can't actually do on your own. You need other people for them. Like him or love him, hate him, you need other people. Actually, I think that other people is all there is, so it's pretty good that it is that way. But actually, the problem is, how do we work together in ways that are rich and productive? So we started off yesterday by saying that what happens in the world is stuff happens. Things just go on. Things come out at you. You either a complete absence of anything, no one responds to you. They give you a really, really wishy-washy response. You get quite an angry or resistant response. There's a whole range of things that happen to us. And by and large, our normal human reflex response is to make up a story about it. We find some story, almost invariably, it's got us as the hero, the victim, the martyr. We're always pretty good in the story. But the other people always tend to come off slightly worse than we do. And, response is to get into kinds of behaviors and relationships that aren't desperately productive and don't deliver what we want. And we spent some of the time in the morning talking about that. And then we said there's another way of looking at this. If we stopped seeing this as person to person and we saw it as context to context, it freed us up for another way of engaging with stuff. So if we saw it as people living in different worlds of tops, middles, bottoms, or customers, it gave us the opportunity to think, hey, these were people just like us, probably to a vague attempt to do a decent job, etc., but moderately inept and doing the best they can and working hard and keen and conscientious enough to want to do it better. So we started maybe having a bit more empathy and understanding that actually in that position, the world might seem slightly different, it might be more complex than I was assuming it, and there might be another way of engaging. And we saw you behave really, really well in some of those models in the afternoon, where people behaved in door A ways of behaving, you didn't fall into the trap of making up a story, evaluating them, and you held the possibilities for partnership, and you described really, really productive outcomes. So you stayed focused, you on what the task was, you were quite strategic in your responses, and actually the outcomes you got yesterday I thought were really, really superb. Vast sums of money, real product out there, and most of you, not all, etc., having had a really, really good time, a real sense of achievement, that, wow, we actually did something in, 20% less time, and, everything, and we just did amazingly well. But what we also started to do is we put together one other bit of the jigsaw. We said, maybe because of these different perspectives, the different worlds we were talking about there, you happen to come and live in a particular inherent world. So the tops were inherently overloaded, the bottoms were inherently disregarded, the middles were inherently crunched, and customer life was one of permanent neglect, etc. And then what happened was we saw that through innate reflexive responses, not all of us, not all of the time, but awfully frequently, we have an innate reflective response that leads to experiences that aren't that good for us, etc. So the tops suck up the responsibility and become burdened. The bottoms say, gosh, they can see problems with their condition in themselves and the system, and they hold people above them responsible, and they feel oppressed. And what we started to do was explore that our own behaviors would contribute to it. It wasn't a reality that being at the bottom meant you had to be oppressed. We took a role within it in creating that experience. And what we explored was another way of engaging with it. This required an active leadership stand. We had to take a position. We had to make some sense of commitment, how it was we wanted to be, and we thought there might be other possibilities that came out of it. So you could be a top who creates responsibility throughout the organization rather than taking responsibility away from people within the system. You could be a bottom who took responsibility for their condition and the condition of the system. You could be a middle who is hell-bent on maintaining their independence of thought and action and telling the tops, no, that stuff's drivel, don't let it come down, telling the bottoms, no, you need to fix that yourselves, or getting the two of them to sort out and getting on with real middle work. and you became a customer who started to get involved in the delivery process. So you didn't just sit back and wait and weren't dependent on it, you helped the delivery process work itself. And what you did then in groups and later in the afternoon, you started to talk about what actual tactics and strategies would actually help with it. So you did some work around the top empowerment strategies of informing, involving, developing, and structuring the organization in such a ways that allowed responsibility to flow appropriately through the organization and for you to do appropriate top work. And similarly, with the middles, it said, when these are the issues you're doing, what are the issues that you just take responsibility for, you become tops for as middles? Which are the issues where you become bottoms for? You don't let the stuff that's coming from the top go any further than you. You act as an umbrella and you say, nonsense, this stuff shouldn't be going down there. They're perfectly capable of sorting that stuff for themselves. Just bounce it straight back to the tops. About coaching, facilitating, and we talked a bit about this yesterday, and we'll talk a lot more about it today, the importance of integrating with your peers, how the middles need to work together. And bottoms moved the shift from being a victim to a co-creator, so start to see what you had done that had helped co-create the position you were in. I remember years ago I was working with GPs when the new GP contract came in, and they were absolutely livid, in the sense that how dare the government tell them what to do, etc. And the work was to try and get them to see how the fact that their contract said a GP will do whatever they wanted to do, so they could open whenever they wanted, turn up whenever they wanted, do whatever quality they wanted, somehow wasn't acceptable. And their inability to deal with that and do anything about it had led to this kind of contract. They weren't just passive victims, they'd co-created the situation they were in. And again, we also looked around customer empowerment relationships, and this holds just as much for internal customers as external customers. And actually, you need to know how the system works, and you need to be able to enable and support it, and the clarity around knowing what you want and what's acceptable and working that through with them made a real difference. So in a sense, that was the story that was going through our heads yesterday, and hopefully there's a reasonable amount of overlap with what the story going through your heads tomorrow day. So let's now sit down, and then we'll go through and structure around the rest of today.